And we're live. Yes, we are. And today we're going to be talking. Oh, sorry, I forgot. And this is
Rachel.
Rachel. We will be going through the Socionics E.I.I. profile, which in English is INFP. And Rachel doesn't necessarily know her type, but we'll be going through quite a few profiles, hopefully. Eventually, we might get her type, so let's have a look. Right. This relates to, I'll go back to that in a moment. In Model G, we have the creative function is, so for instance, usually INFP would be represented as FiNe, and that is in the maximum energy column. So again, FiNe, but Viktor sees these two closely working together.
Okay.
And you might be thinking at home now, are you crazy, Ben? What is this crazy model? But I can prove it to you. This is the description of the ESFP from Please Understand Me Too. So all of these are quotes from there. We'll just go over some artisan traits for the moment, because this is like their raison d'etre, right? So like concrete in communication, utilitarian in use of tools. That means they do things their way. Hedonistic, optimistic but cynical, focused on the here and now, often excited, they trust their impulses, aspire to virtuosity. So that means basically being an expert and demonstrating their skills. Right, and some other traits. Oh yes, Jeff Miller gave me the idea of using like the Latin binomial name. So for instance, so like Homo sapiens, those human beings are like Homo sapiens sapiens. So it was like, so the composer, ISFP, is like entertainer composer, and ESFP is entertainer performer, like just to show how close they are. Now the thing is, I wanted to like find the Latin name for that, but it's exactly the same. And so then I thought, okay, I'll go find the redneck name.
Oh my gosh.
And there it is, the redneck name for entertainer performer.
Okay.
What is it? Entertainer performer. Oh no, I said it in the West Country accent. Totally wrong. Right, so what we got here? So we've got, if we say goals, so ESFP wants all these things. So this is like from the Kersey profile. So, and this is like, as in Viktor's model, this first square, this is the management, the lead, the program, the leading function is like, this is what they want. And this is like the auxiliary function. So this is SE and this is FI. So like kindness, all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, now, in the actual description of the ESFP are all of these things. And I've asked Rachel before this off air, which function do you think this green box, these things in the green box sound like?
FE.
FE, right. So what it's showing here is that the ESFP uses a lot of FE, but it's not valued for the purpose of being an attention whore.
Wow.
And right. So that sort of proves that at least for this type, the ESFP, that second function is, in terms of how they behave, you see them at a party, emotionally expressive, they're using FE more than FI, and I suppose when you get closer to them, you notice the FI. Right. So now we can look at the creative use, because it's harder to see in INFP. Right, I will explain the energy level, and people are probably thinking, oh, I can't read that. It looks like a spider's crawled on your page, Ben. So I will look, I'll look at the flashy, no, I won't even look at this one either, because, right, that's how, like, again, bit scratchy. But then I thought I had some help from an INTJ, a helpful one, so a rare species indeed. and so we've got energy level. So the lead function and the auxiliary function. So in the INFP's case, FI and NE have maximum energy. Right, and so we'll have a look at that here. So it's like endowed with excess capacity, it consumes the lion's share of the psyche's energy. So it's like a lot of people just stay in their top two functions. The more powerful the first function, the more distance the commutative field covers. That is, you can decide for yourselves what that means, but it's not too vague. Optimum energy. Function receives as much energy as is needed to solve challenges. More complex the task, the more energy is at its disposal. Right, and that goes for the shadow function, which would be NI in the INFP's case, and for the inferior function, which is NI in the ESM. So you have, because people have a lot of energy for their inferior function at close range, meaning on their territory, like in their field of interest. So for instance, an INTP is a lot more expressive when they're talking about something like physics or Star Trek or anything that they're passionate about.
Okay.
They will just go a bit more on the energy, then I'll explain a bit more about what Dario says. Oh yeah, I'll also talk. This block is how it's. The idea is that that's how they contribute to the soci. So if we if we go back to ESFP, in their role as performer, they're like using the FE and the SE. So for instance, their artistry and their audacity and adaptability in combination with their FE. So for instance, even if they're not an actor or actress, they might be demonstrating these two things. Like if they say they're in public relations and they're dealing well under pressure, and they're also using their charm and all this stuff. So that's like, so these two are like used to like contribute to the soci or society. Right. So go back to this. Right, and now we're looking at let's put some meat on the bones when we talked about maximum energy. Right, and also talk about actually, yeah, I'll talk about. Okay, then we've got lower energy. These are two shadow functions. So it's like function is at minimum for the solution of the corresponding task level energy consumption. It's able to regularly solve a repetitive simple task, or as EJR&D has said, good enough about. And I think he actually said that about the tertiary function, so I'm a bit wrong there. So that, like, just about get by. So INFP has enough TI to get by. And then this one has insufficient power to solve complex or repetitive tasks. I like Victor word pessimum. I thought, oh, that's clever. It means less than minimum. Oh yeah, it starts a new circuit of activity. I'll talk about later on. Oh yeah, social adaptation block. Yeah, I'll put some more meat on the bones of that later on. And then we got, and then I'll let you know which ones. Now, externalities. So Victor believes that introverts interact in society with their introverted functions, and the introverted functions suppress the extroverted functions beneath, unless the person is in their comfort zone, on their territory, then you see a more expressive side to them. So for instance, INTP is when they're warmed up, when they're talking about a subject that they're passionate about. Or so for instance, I can give you an example. Dave Kurz is an INTP. He likes doing hangouts, talking about theory and stuff. So because then he's on his territory, in his comfort zone. And so the idea is it's activated by external stimulation of the function in the launcher position. So INFP is actually stimulated by seeing suffering in others, and that starts their FI because they feel sympathy for them, and it's directed outwards towards society. And it takes precedence whenever society is involved. The top row takes precedence over the bottom row. Right, and then so it suppresses the one underneath. This will become clearer in time, folks, when I put some meat on the bones. At close psychological distance, when it's on the range, then these, like, you see the other side too. So you'll see the extroverted side to the introverts when they're in their comfort zone. Right, that's basically that. The blocks. Right, so this is where people will all, like in YouTube videos with these teenagers or youngish people, they'll probably always be talking about how good their auxiliary and inferior functions are. Right, so you'll have INFJs always talking about their magic FE and their SE. Because it's part of their self-image. That's that block. This block is like the inflation block, which is like you've not got much energy for it. Right, okay, people are probably thinking, oh no, my brain's overloaded. Right. I'll have to. Right, okay, this matches Dario's, like the lead function. So in INFP, this is FI. And like Dario is like, okay, you see a lot of activity in the brain regions associated with FI. So that would be these regions. And Dario's not made these regions up. You can go on Wikipedia and look at temporal lobe and you'll see it's associated with sound. And if you've been in a long hangout, you'll probably get a headache in these regions. That's happened to me.
What color? I'm not seeing which one is the FI.
Purple.
The purple is FI?
Yeah, purple. So for instance, INFPs are very good at listening to people, hearing tone of voice, all that kind of stuff, personal value. Not much activity here for ESTPs.
Right.
Right. So, oh God, I'm being a bit rambling with this explanation. But it will make sense when I get to the profile. Right. So now, and so the creative function. Right. This is interesting. So it's as with when I showed you the ESFP. It's just done. It's not really thought about. So, for instance, when you ask Jeff Miller, the SP Spaz, it's like, oh no, I don't use FE. It's incidental. To doing what I want to achieve, being the center of attention, being the performer. So it's like, it's just done. That you can see it. Like, and when it's like, so for instance, ESTP. A lot of ESTPs run a business because they don't really want to be. They want to be their own boss. And so you can see them be organized when they're using their TE. You can see an ENTP using their TE when they're being an entrepreneur. You can see ENFPs and ESFPs using their people skills. You can see some of the functions are harder to see than others. Oh yes, ISFP. ISFPs are very caring. They can be a bit badass, but they are very caring. So that's their creative SI. ENTJs can be entrepreneurial, and their creative NE will see opportunities in the market. Right. Right, so that EEG activity is mixed. So for introverts, you can have a load of activities. So for instance, not necessarily predictive, but for instance, all of these types here actually show more EEG activity for the creative function. So what I mean by that is ISTP and ISFP have a ton of activity at the back of the brain, which is the occipital lobe, which is associated with the visual cortex. So that is a lot of SI activity. And if people see my interview with Tristan Xavier Smith, they will you will notice how observant he is. And that, again, back of the brain, very active. So the creative, so that creative function is very strong in those types, but they are also artisans. So you do see their SE as well. I don't know, ENTP uses a lot of the back of the brain. So they use TI in a different way from INTP and ISTJ as well. And INFJ. INFJ is very active in those FI areas I showed before. Because like their counselors, like they're good at listening too. So it's like, it's a little bit, so it's like you use sort of both. So for instance, INFJ will use FE and FI. ESFP will use FE and FI. It's just that one's not valued. And INFP uses NE and NI. So I showed that.
So
right,
it's just these ones listed here that have more of the creative in the auxiliary, and the others it's the other way around.
But that's just in terms of the EEG activity, but because it's like what's done rather than what's thought about, it's not actually necessarily predicting high EEG activity, because the EEG activity really just detects like mental effort. So like when Dario did his test, he was like really like straining people. It's like if you do like a particular thing that requires a lot of concentration, you'll get a headache in a particular part of your brain.
Okay.
Like you've been in long hangouts recently. Do you ever like get like the temples? You get a little headache in your temples because that part of the brain is associated with language.
I don't know. I haven't thought about that before. Usually, you know, the first thing I think of is, oh, this chair is not that comfortable. Not thinking about my head, but I'll pay attention to that now.
It may be because you're so good at that function, you're not overloading it like an INTP that has to like force themselves to listen.
It could be.
Right. So this next thing is that Dario and Chris Montoya predicted that you have like functions working together. And so for instance, high EEG activity for the auxiliary function, and also tandem use. So for instance, you know, the tandem functions working together. So NE with SI, SE with NI, TE with FI, TI with FE. Break functions. Right, okay. I've overloaded people. Now we can go to the profile. People have an idea of energy decreasing across and externalities and internalities. Right, so this is how so now I can ask Rachel about this. A bit of a list there, sorry. So it's like, what do you think of these bullet points, Rachel? Be honest. If you don't fit, let us know.
Okay, listening to people removes their emotional stress. I would say when I'm in an ideal state, I enjoy listening to people, yeah. If I'm already overloaded, then I isolate myself. Smooth, friendly relations. Who doesn't like that? Able to remain objective. I try to be objective. tolerant, compliant. Again, under stress, I definitely feel like I could be better at those things, but try. Forgives his attackers and detractors. I don't think I'm the best at that, but after a while, it's hard to stay mad at people, I would say. Ready to help people turn to him for support. Yeah. Makes them more than they expect. I like to try and uplift people, I guess. So I guess that would make sense.
So do you, when I thought that, I thought, you know, it might make someone a lot of food. Or just something, but that's what,
physically giving somebody things. Okay.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's, oh yeah, just let people know that this is from the Google Translate version. So I wasn't able to get I didn't ask for like a human translation. So I did my best with converting from the Google Translate version. Don't really need to advertise my channel because it's on it. Right.
Yeah.
And so this idea is that, oh, well, if you go through these bullet points, I'll then explain about how they're sort of linked.
Okay. N.I. Creative is doing everything in its power to prevent or mitigate the impending danger. I would definitely agree with that for myself. Like always thinking about what could go wrong and trying to prevent it from happening. Learns from the past, yes. Well, allocates time between different things. I don't know. If I actually set the intention to do that, then yes, but sometimes I can be just sort of, following whims as they come up. Punctually comes to events, even if he knows that you can be late. I do like to try and be early because, if you don't try and be early, then usually something will make you be late. So yeah, not always great with that, but
The main one there that shows the connection with the FI is like prevent or mitigate the impending danger. So it's like, I suppose they can like see the cause and effect of maybe how certain actions can maybe affect a relationship. So they might see cause and effect in emotional terms. I don't know if you do that. Did you like think ahead about how it might affect a relationship, things like that?
Oh, definitely. Like, I would say that's like an involuntary thing.
Do you want to give us some details without naming names?
Well,
or you could make one up.
well, I suppose I worried a lot about a teacher that I have. How would she feel if I was unable to come to this thing we had planned to do together? And so, I don't want to damage my long-term relationship with her. So, I went along with some things that I really didn't want to do, and I finally got pretty overloaded, and I was very honest. Like I told her, I'm having a hard time in my day-to-day life right now. I feel really overwhelmed, and I hope you won't be upset with me, but I need to, skip this meeting that we have planned. And she was very understanding. But yeah, I do worry about things like that all the time, like that I'm going to a long-term relationship with somebody if I do something that's not considerate of them.
Right. So this shows how the INFP is looking into the future, thinking about the consequences of their actions. And that is actually why, and there's a link there between the NI and the SE polar, because SE is all about being impulsive and in the moment, and that is the opposite of thinking about the consequences. If you're thinking the consequences and going into the future, that's what makes them reticent to. And so let's see if these things match up.
Let's see, often does not stand confidence. So not feeling confident, you think?
I think that means in other people. You know, like ESTPs.
You don't like it when other people are overly confident.
Yeah, you know, like Donald Trump, ESTP.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess what I tend to think of is if somebody's really arrogant and cocky and pretentious and seems to value themselves above everyone else. I don't like that kind of confidence. So that might be relevant. Let's see, impressionable and vulnerable. I definitely say I'm impressionable and vulnerable, yeah. Cannot put pressure on people. I hate having to try and force people to do things, and I have 2 kids. We've talked about it before. I just it can be a really draining situation to try and force people to do things that they don't want to do, and then you have to do it because you know that you're the only person who will do this, and you have to protect their best interests. But it's just such a draining thing. Let's see. Though sharply respond. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
Though sharply respond to attempts to dictate. Oh, like somebody trying to get me to do something? Yeah. Okay. Yep. I a lot of the times will just sort of, set a boundary when that sort of thing happens. I'm kind of surprised how much I'm relating to this so far. But yeah, I'm pretty stubborn, I guess. That would be another way to put it. His kindness is sometimes abused as it is difficult to refuse requests. I think that kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier with the NI. Just really feeling like I don't want to do anything to damage the long-term situation here. So I'm going to try and keep ignoring what I need and, do what I think this other person wants.
So this block is swelling of information in the absence of real energy, and something like over voltage of this block. So like too much thinking about these things leads to collapse of the mind, just as monetary inflation leads to collapse of the economy. Now, this is Viktor making a comparison, but he also lived through very high inflation in the 1990s. So it's not just propaganda by Austrians. He actually wrote that.
Wow.
So this block, yeah, I'll go back to that in a moment. This block is sort of like the opposite of this. So if you so folks like INFP is a feeler. So in general, they have a lot of information about people's feelings, both FI and FE, but they have not much energy for FE because the FI comes first. And so they have very high information for FE. They notice emotions around them. They notice the facial expressions, but it's not. So it's these things.
Monitors manifestation of emotions in others. Yes. Immediately notices when growing emotional stress. I think so, yeah. Does not like crowds, loud compliment. Well,
that's what I assume it means.
I don't like crowds. I really don't like crowds. Like most of my social interaction takes place online, so it's a very safe way of doing things. Yeah. Openly expressing their experience gives him a hard time. I would say it's not easy. It's gotten easier as I've gotten older. But yeah, it's hard to not feel strange about just being very open, I guess.
It's up to you if you want to reveal your age.
Oh, I'm 32.
She doesn't look it, does she, folks?
Thank you.
Right. So yeah. So that's like sort of like the FE is high information because they're feeler, and so they're attuned to people's emotion, but they've not got the energy for it because they're thinking. FI is pretty much, you can say, it's staying true to yourself, your own values, how you feel about things. So it's very much subjective, and that can be both. So this might give us a chance now to have a look at FI in terms of the positives and negatives of FI, so that people have a. And this is a little bit I've sort of like exaggerated the negatives and positives, so people have an idea of what it looks like.
Yeah.
First thing I would say about FI is when it is very weak, you notice that, like, from its absence, it's almost like you don't value something until it's gone. So it's like when someone hasn't got the FI, it's like whoa, you get that kind of inappropriate behavior from ESTPers and ENTPers. So, but then I would say you can have a situation where with FI DOMs, they can be like, especially the younger ones, they can be self-righteous, oversensitive, prone to projection, a subjective emo, self-centered, right? Because it's all about how people or things make them personally feel. Closed-minded after a judgment. That's right. If they're the most open-minded type until they've made a decision, and then they won't change. And then that's a little bit of political bias by me at the bottom. Suppresses logic. It's hard for FI ego types to understand Peter Schiff. Mind you, it's hard for everyone to understand it. But then I give some amazing positives on as well, like conscience, sensitivity, empathy. These are really good things, folks. So I'm being because like these things on the left, not really present in ENTPs and ESTPs. So it sort of shows how important the function is. And of course, most people will be in the middle of this and sometimes show the positive and negative traits.
Yeah. Anybody with that's using FI a lot would probably do all of these things to some extent, right?
Yeah. Except ESFP is probably going to be less self-righteous because they're an artisan and they're going to be, and it's hard for them to be self-righteous when they're partying away, having fun.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, it depends, because FI is such an individual function that you can have, like, say, good FI and bad FI depending on the person. If someone's like a good person, then their FI is going to be, because it's like, it's what they are. It's just like, it's, if someone's, so it's like Dario will say, staying true to who you really are. So if you're a good person who is really empathetic and has a conscience and all of those things, then they viewing the world through the lens of that is not really a problem. But it's like, if someone is like, has the other kind of FI where it's like they're like totally selfish, then it will be a bit more like that. But it's still, and one of the things you can notice about INFPs, especially if they're Enneagram 4s, and I'm an Enneagram 4, so I can say this, is that watch out for them using I and my a lot. because they're talking about how they themselves relate to things. So pronoun density. I, my, me. So yeah, so they have to. So with the younger ones, as they get older, they use more of their logic and they become more. But again, it depends on what the FI is like. It's like what the actual instinct is like. Because these things are quite close, self-righteous and conscience. So it's like that can be a lot of overlap there. It really does depend on the issue.
Yeah.
I mean, like you can have one person who a lot of people would say, oh, that person's a member of conscience, and then other people can say about the same person, oh, they're so self-righteous. So the same person can be criticized. So, for instance, all of those things in the negative column, they'd be like the sort of things that maybe like an ESTP. Like a lot of those things are like what EJR&D would say, like prone to projection. But yeah, I've sort of circled or sausaged the empathy and projection. Because in order to have empathy, you have to project. You have to use that vicarious thing of projecting yourself into another person, and you recognize. So imagine. So it creates that empathy, that recognition.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And that is very important in the art. So it's like the character of George Costanza. A lot of people like him watching would really identify with the character. And there's so many INFPs and INFJs that just identify the heck with Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones. Just that recognition, that connection. And again, that has to come with projection. And it's like, yeah, he's me. She's me.
Yeah, I really like that, how you have that these are sort of the same thing, but a positive and negative way of looking at them.
Yeah. Yeah, and originally it was done like this because it was meant to be shown on webcam. So I did it in that big, bold writing. So yeah, so try to be even-handed. Right. So the thing is, it's all from the point of view of the person, both positive and negative, and the FE. And so when someone is experiencing the world subjectively, like the FE considerations of other people will be in the background, but because they're feelers, they can still see, they can still sense all of the emotions of the people. Then you get that balance between. It depends if the FE values conflict with the FI values, then the FI will sort of like has a veto over the FE. But a lot of times they won't conflict, and so INFPs and ISFPs are going to be kind and consider other people. It's only when there's a conflict, and like the INFP and ISFP is going to say, no, I don't agree with that. That goes against my values. Right. Go back. So, right, that's sort of done those. Now we can do, if we do this, the self-affirmation block, we're halfway through.
Wow. All right.
Right. Yeah, at close range territory. So when someone's in their comfort zone. So take it away, Rachel. What do you think of those things in the NE box?
Okay, let's see. Encourages talents, supports capable people. I would say absolutely. I like to try and see the best in people and encourage them to, use their talents for sure. Educates children by personal example. Gosh. I don't know how to respond to that one because I have kids and, you know, I dwell a lot on what I feel my failings are. I think that mostly I would like to try really hard to have fun, to make things fun in order, you know, to get them excited about things. And then if that doesn't work, then it's like, oh no, now I have to be serious. I don't know if I've experienced that one with a personal example. Maybe. Able to sacrifice her interests for the sake of those who she considers worthy. Yeah, definitely. You know, I think that there are people in your life who you just do that for, and you know, hope that they would do the same for you. Let's see, his demonstrative faith in good and what looks good is somewhat naive. Okay, yeah, probably. Let's see here. Manipulative TE.
Yeah, so this is the same as the
Industrious.
inferior function or the suggestive.
Okay. Okay. Industrious cannot remain on the sidelines while others are working. Yeah, that's motivating if somebody else is working and then, you know, come and help. Catching work, immersed in it so that it is difficult to stop. Is that like when you start doing something and you just kind of go with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
momentum?
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. Economically expend resources. Now you're gonna have to help me with that then, because I'm not really sure what that's.
I think it's this idea that they've got like a miniature ESTJ in them, and like they have like an innate sense of uh, not buying too much and like spreading whatever cash they have, like spending
Oh,
it
so they're frugal.
thoughtfully. Yeah, frugal. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I try to be aware of where there's waste, I guess, and try not to be wasteful for sure. Um, Fan of technology. I'm not sure who just doesn't like technology.
Well,
Learning
you
to
like
do
Google
everything.
Hangouts.
Yeah, I like Google Hangouts. Learning to do everything with their hands benefit even in the small.
Yeah, that's a bit.
Um,
But yeah, going back to technology, do you have like an iPhone or an Android phone? Are you like hot for the apps? Do you have like loads of apps on your phone?
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't remember half the things that I have to do if I didn't put it in my phone right away. So yeah, I'm kind of dependent on technology. So,
I think that learning to do everything with their hands benefit even small. I think it's like even if it's like a minor skill,
mm,
they'll learn it. I think even if it's like not really that beneficial, they'll still learn it. I think that's what that means.
hmm. Well, I'm not sure how to
Yep.
apply that one to myself.
Right. So if we now go to now there's an idea that uh, uh, this NA sort of like stimulate like the ESTJ. So for
Mhm.
instance, like you're giving them support and it would like stimulate them. And then the ESTJ's SI would sort of stimulate the SI here. So if we do SI first, this is what really gets the, social adaptation. Uh, so it's like when the first two functions aren't suitable for solving a particular task, these two come in. So for instance, if FI can't be used, INFP will use TI, but always going to prefer FI. And then SI. So what do you think of that for the SI section?
Okay, let's see. Modest and undemanding in everyday life. Um, so that would mean that the INFP is an undemanding person.
Yeah, this is in terms of comforts. So not necessarily having the showiest, most expensive clothes, I suppose.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't really care about flashy things and expensive things or anything like that. I like just practical.
Although you will spend money in the NF shop buying crystals.
That is true. Yeah, they're not that expensive though, and they are useful. So
yeah. I don't know if you've got them nearby.
I do have some right here.
Yeah. You can show them on camera. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Rejects delighting in feeding, or is that feeding or seeding? Seeding or showiness?
Yeah, feeding. Yeah, feeding. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really like what is it called? Ostentatious?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that sort of repulsive. So I would agree with that. Faithful to those who provide him with such support. Oh, with SI type, like taking care of you. Oh, yeah, definitely appreciate that sort of support.
And that last one, I think, is key.
Discomfort, illness, physical deprivation of other people causes active compassion in him. Okay, yeah, I would say so. If you can, I guess I don't know if this is just probably not just INFPs, but as a parent, if you can tell your kid is sick, you're sort of an instant compassion. So
this is part of the reason why Viktor calls he calls the INFP the humanitarian.
That's nice.
And then yeah.
Should I read the role stuff?
Yeah. The role. I'll just put the so people can see it for the moment. Yeah, if you want to read, characterized by restraint and discipline.
Okay. I would say that
be honest.
I can be. Actually, I was a lot more like that when I was younger. I feel like in school, very disciplined, and I guess I was reserved. I did exercise a lot of restraint. I've sort of loosened up as I've gotten older. Conscientious, albeit slow performer. Okay, so that's like your attention to detail, rather than speed.
Yeah, I think it's like following instructions as well, I think.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes I'll read the same instructions like over and over and over. Oh, am I doing this? Yeah, okay. Doing it. Oh, good job. For the job requires more detailed instructions. Yeah, I like detailed instructions for sure. What is this? Question. Okay.
Yeah, because originally I did this for Leon. Yeah. So this is why I'm doing all these Model G videos, because I think like Viktor's profiles are so good.
Yeah, this is really nice. A lot of detail.
And the idea of energy, like you've got these 4 blocks: the social mission, like I said, the FI, and then the thinking of the consequences of actions in terms of on your relationships and how you're going to affect their feelings. So like a parent might say, oh, don't do that, you might hurt his feelings. And then we've got social adaptation, which is like when this first block's not appropriate for the task. And then we've got like self-affirmation, like the bits that they sort of like want to improve, and so the NE and the TE, like they're not using it all the while, but they'll use it on their territory. And then the weakest area where not got a lot of energy for SE and F, and it causes them a lot of stress.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is that the control function is very high in information, but low in energy. And so by comparison, INTP has a lot of business ideas, but they've not got the energy or the organizational skills to implement those ideas.
Okay, because you've got the TE there on the 8th instead of
Yeah. Whereas in Model A, it would just say TE ignoring.
Mm-hmm.
But Model G nuances it into information and energy. Right. Don't know anything. The thing else I could ask is to help with people watching your type is I can ask about intertype relations.
Mm.
So if we look at INFP, which is here, and so if we read across from square 4 to square 3, that will give you a conflictor. So what do you think is? What do you think of ESTPs and how you get on with them?
Okay, well, when I think of the archetype of that personality, it's definitely somebody that I would tend to avoid.
Right.
I try to be more open-minded. I try to be objective and give everybody a chance, but I have to admit that I probably avoid people who fit the archetype of what I imagine as ESTP.
Right. Very diplomatic.
Thank you.
Because the abstraction can't call you up and say, "Hey, what did you say to me?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then 3 to 4 is the superego, which is not quite as bad as conflict, but can be tricky. Unless the ISTP has a nice voice and is called Tristan.
Oh my gosh. You know, I'm going to say sort of the same thing for ISTP. I have this idea in my head of, you know, I think it's mechanic archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, that's not somebody that I would typically try and build a deep relationship with because there's just doesn't seem to be a lot of room to connect there.
I've just realised, folks, right, that's it now, folks. What we're going to do is we're going to continue the intertype relations in a separate video. But, and so, because we don't want to make this too long, because we can do another one and watch out for part 2. All right, so we're going to stop now. We've whetted your appetite with the intertype relations. And bye for now, folks.
Bye.
Oh, I think it did stop over this.